Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on this edition of The Insight. I am Babile Jonathan. In the latest report of international rights organization, Human Rights Watch, military violence is revealed in Ebam village in the southwest region of the Republic of Cameroon. According to Human Rights Watch, on the 1st of March 2020, soldiers of the Cameroonian Armed Forces raped at least 20 women, including some with disabilities, in that part of the crisis-stricken southwest region of the country, arrested many, tortured many, and one of the men who were arrested and tortured in a military camp, according to that report, died. And besides all these, Human Rights Watch also reveals that the soldiers equally committed other atrocities, including destruction of properties. In the meantime, members of the lower house of parliament of the Republic of Cameroon, who have not been able to discuss or debate the Anglophone crisis in parliament for the past 4 years, have written a letter to the U.S. Congress criticizing congressmen for what they consider as derogatory remarks with regards to the socio-political and security tensions in the Republic of Cameroon. They think that the recent outing of the U.S. congressmen was misleading and could contribute to fuel the situation or to worsen the situation in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. We'll be analyzing this in this edition of The Inside. Stay with us. Thank you for joining us in this edition of The Inside. Our first guest today is Marshal FONCHA, chairman of New Africa Coalition Front, and he's a former separatist leader. He's joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Babila, for inviting me once more to Equinoxe Television. As you can see, I am not at my home office right now because I am actually traveling. That is why I'm currently doing this segment in my car, parked on the highway, because I think this is a very important topic that the Cameroonian people and the international community should hear from some of us. Thank you again.
You must have read through the report released by Human Rights Watch revealing human rights violations in the southwest region of the country, notably in Ebam village, where at least 20 women are said to have been raped by elements of the National Armed Forces, and many others arrested and tortured. And one of the men who were arrested and tortured in a military camp on the 1st of March 2020, according to that report, died. And that report also alleges that the soldiers also committed other atrocities, notably the burning down of houses. What's your take on this?
Well, basically, these excesses by the Cameroon military didn't just start it. What happened in a bank village is a terrible disaster, and actually it tarnished the image of the regular Cameroon armed forces and the government of Cameroon. And we can list uncountable acts of terrorizing civilians by rogue personnel within the Cameroon military forces since this crisis began. But the Cameroon government should own and take responsibility first to identify those members within their ranking files in the Cameroon military and persecute them or adjudicate them or bring them to justice. Because irrespective of the fact that there is a war on the ground, the military of the country, which is supposed to be protecting the civilians, some of them are actually the ones actually carrying these excesses, these crimes against humanity. And what happened in a bank, it's not different from what has happened in many other places like Kwakwa, like Ngabu, like the other places across the country. We must understand that the government of Cameroon, if they don't take responsibility and bring these soldiers, these rogue forces within their ranks to order and to book, it's only going to perpetuate the cycle of violence, and this crisis will not come to an end, as we all hope, peacefully, because the forces that are fighting will be committing the same atrocities, and it will be blamed on each side. So the quicker the Cameroon government adjudicate this matter and bring these soldiers to book, it will be better for all of Cameroon and Cameroonians, and especially to bring a conclusion and a resolution to this crisis. So I think the Cameroon government is the one here who has to take responsibility for the crimes that were committed in a bank village in March of 2020.
However, all of what is contained or written in the report by Human Rights Watch is still at the level of allegations or accusations. The Ministry of Defense or the government of Cameroon has not yet reacted to that, and it should be noted that the government has constantly, repeatedly, including the head of state, said that the military is professional. The military has been doing its job within the ambit of professional and humanitarian norms, and doing its job of protecting the territorial integrity of Cameroon and the people living in those areas, while fighting to bring down the insecurity and the crime wave in those parts of the country. But when such an incident occurs at this point in time, what can we read within the lines of the evolution of the armed conflict?
Mr. Babila, this is laughable. Even the most professional military, so-called professional military in the world, the American soldiers, committed excesses in Afghanistan, committed excesses in Iraq, and they have committed excesses in different parts of the world that they have had war with those countries. But you see, the American government take responsibility in what happened in Samoa, took responsibility in what happened in Afghanistan, took responsibility in what happened in Baghdad, when rogue American forces killed civilians who are not part of this war. We understand in every war there may be collateral damages, but to target civilians, women and children, especially raping women, this is a genocidal act, and that's a crime against humanity as understood by the Geneva Conventions. So there is no government in the world that will tell you that their military is professional and they will not want to accept the excesses of the rogue forces within their ranks. There is no military that don't have rogue forces within their ranks. So in this case, for the Cameroon government to be credible in the eyes of the international community, they should be actively investigating these type of allegations and bringing in independent investigators to clean their books and take away and remove those soldiers within their ranks, in their regular armed forces, that are committing these atrocities. Likewise, on the side of the secessionist fighters, you have some secessionist fighters that believe in what they are doing, but you have among the ranks of the secessionist fighters that are committing the same atrocities that the rogue forces within the Cameroon military is committing. And who is the one suffering? It's the civilian population that is suffering because in the hands of these rogue forces on either side of this conflict. So the Cameroon government, protecting the integrity and sovereignty of the country, is exactly what it is: protecting life and property. So they are the ones who are in control of the territory. They are the ones who must launch this inquiry and investigations properly and transparently in order to gain international credibility that the government actually is in control of the sovereignty and they are protecting life and property. It's not the secessionist forces. The secessionist forces, they don't control any territory in Cameroon. They don't control any piece of real estate in the northwest and southwest. The Cameroon government does. So it is the responsibility of the Cameroon government to open an inquiry into these type of atrocities being committed by rogue forces within their ranks.
Human Rights Watch is making this revelation close to a year after it happened. That was on the 1st of March 2020, and Human Rights Watch in its report indicated that the victims and survivors are desperately seeking for justice and are living with the disturbing information that those who committed the act, those who perpetrated that the atrocities, are moving around freely, have not been persecuted or prosecuted, and nothing has happened to them. According to the information obtained by Human Rights Watch, no investigation has been done.
Well, that is actually a fact, because most of the other crimes that were committed, that has been committed by the rogue military personnel within the regular Cameroon army, have not been adjudicated either. What has happened in Kwakwa, what happened in Munyenge, that they burned down villages, those soldiers who burned down those villages, they have not been persecuted or adjudicated either. So what happened in Ebang village, which is actually my natal in Manyo, has not been investigated either. What actually happened even in Gabu, they did an investigation, but there is no real transparency in holding into account those who are actually responsible. I will repeat it again, Mr. Babila. And I want the government of Cameroon and all the Cameroonian people to understand. They know my position. I am not in favor of separating that country any longer. I believe in a 10-state federation in that country moving forward. And some of those goals have been achieved through the decentralization process. And I am following the lead of the government of Cameroon. The government of Cameroon, if they want to gain international credibility, as they say, they are the ones who are, and as rightfully so, they control the national sovereignty of that country. They are the ones to hold these soldiers into account, but they have not been doing that. What they do is quasi investigation, and the whole 1 or 2 soldiers involved. But we all know, as citizens of that ancestral homeland of ours, that there are many, many rogue forces, soldiers within the ranking files of the Cameroon military. So the Ministry of Defense in Cameroon have to do due diligence in identifying those bad actors within their ranks, because the civilian population in the southwest and northwest, in as much as they want the protection of the Cameroonian military, the Cameroonian government and the Department of Defense should also give them some leverage and reason to trust them that they're not going to come into their villages anymore and rape their girls and women and kill innocent civilians who are not actually secessionist forces. Because I've seen some disturbing, Mr. Babila, I've seen some disturbing images in Babalang, where a young man is arrested just for the simple fact that, beaten mercilessly by the soldiers, just for the simple fact that his brother is part of the secessionist forces. That is wrong. Those are all excesses. The soldiers cannot arrest a member of one family because the member of that person's family is secessionist forces. So these are all excesses that the Cameroon government should pay great attention to, because it's going to build confidence amongst the people, the civilian population in the northwest and southwest region of the country. So these are errors, grave errors being done by the Ministry of Defense and the government of the Republic. As we try to seek resolution to this crisis, the government have to play their part, and they have to play their part well, transparently, to gain our confidence and the confidence of the international community and the citizens of that country.
The Garbu massacre case, the case is in court. The military court is hearing that case, and it has been postponed at least twice, and the victims are said to be suffering or put through some kind of pressure, threats, intimidation to the extent that they will not appear in court, why do you think that there is no transparency in the manner in which that case is being handled?
Mr. Babila, what I just explained to you earlier, in order for the Cameroon government to gain international credibility when it comes to the excesses of the workforces of that country, there should be a transparent and well-monitored fact-finding mission. The government of the country should give way to an international UN-sponsored fact-finding mission on the ground. This mission is not to come and propose to the government what the government has to do with the socio-economic and political crisis, how to redress it, but to look for those incidents where soldiers within the government have committed crimes and the insurrection forces have committed crimes. Because I am not sitting here and telling you otherwise. At the end of this crisis, the Cameroon government soldiers who have involved in excesses and the secessionist forces who have also involved in excesses, I think they should be persecuted in the International Criminal Court or some type of court in Banjul, or like what happened in Sierra Leone. We're not going to tolerate a fact. Yes, I understand the right to self-determination and the right to bear arms is a universal right. But the right to terrorize civilians, be it the government forces or the secessionist forces, is a crime against humanity. And I will not rest so long as I am involved in this socio-economic and political crisis. There is two things I'm after. For Cameroon to eventually become a 10-state federation, autonomous 10-state federation as they have started. And the second part is to hold all those responsible on both sides who have committed crimes against humanity and killed civilians. Now, for the Gabu massacre, we all know they have been dragging their feet. Look at, years are going by, and they said they are investigating the Gabu massacre. For how long? For how long will they take to investigate or adjudicate the matter in the military tribunal? For how long? And we have to understand those victims, they are the villages that have been burned down. They are undergoing what we call PTSD, post-traumatic syndrome. We must realize that people who have been raped, killed, chastised, they are going through post-traumatic syndrome. And we cannot sit here and play as if the country is well. The country is not well. All 10 regions is not well, because if there is war in one region, it affects the psychic and the people of all the regions in Cameroon. So we cannot pretend that the people in Far North are okay, or Adamawa, or Central, or West, or Littoral. No, the country has an existential socio-economic and political crisis, and the government have to show good faith by investigating matters such as Gabu, bring them to book, and rapidly adjudicate them so we can gain trust in the government. We have to build a better Cameroon for the future generations. And every one of us who is sitting here today must be doing it for the sake of the next generation Cameroon, and not for our own bellies and our own sake at this moment. So that Gabu massacre is an example that an international fact-finding mission sponsored by the United Nations is warranted in cases like that, because the Cameroon government have shown their inaptitude to be able to investigate transparently and persecute those who have committed those excesses within their ranks.
Massacre case is at the Yaoundé military court, and it has been postponed at least twice. And of course, as I said earlier, some of the lawyers indicated that the victims are not showing up in court for issues related to threats, pressure from some government authorities, and of course intimidation. And some of them are being paid off not to appear in court. Now, before we take a look at what the newspapers reported this week, earlier you indicated that there should be all those found guilty of crimes in the northwest and the southwest regions should be prosecuted. At this point in time, shouldn't we be talking about how to reconcile people, how to bring people to the same table in order to be able to find a way out of the troubled waters so that the killings, the destruction can finally come to an end?
Mr. Babila, there cannot be any type of reconciliation without accountability. Reconciliation without accountability is a farce. There has to be accountability, and anywhere in the world, including this United States, the political crisis that we have on, if you watch, they are talking about accountability. If you reconcile without accountability, the chances that this would repeat itself in the future is high. So when we look at Sierra Leone, when we look at South Africa, when we look at all these countries, there was accountability. I am not rejecting the idea of bringing people on the table. Mr. Babila, I'm talking to you. I speak to people within the Cameroon government, not because I am their friend, not because I'm on the side of the government excesses, but because I am seeking reconciliation with the government of the country and the powers that be. But it does not mean that I am not seeking justice as well. I am not blind. I can reconcile. But while reconciling, we have to face justice, because reconciliation without justice is not reconciliation. Because the crimes have been committed against the citizens of the country by both sides. So the very citizens of the country have to be accountable to the citizens of the country. And if the government is the government of the people, by the people, then the government have to be accountable by the people who are the government. So reconciliation is something that I am willing to do. I am willing to sit on the table. I am willing to call my friends that are former secessionist fighters or secessionist fighters to sit on the table and speak with the government. But I've made my position very clear. And some of my position have already started being enacted in the country. Because I know from decentralization, regionalism in Cameroon, eventually we might not be here, but that country will move to a 10-state federation. The ball is already rolling. So that reconciliation for me has already started, in as much as the government of Cameroon will not accept what I'm saying now, but I can tell them that this regionalism that they have started in Cameroon is the way forward, and that will end up in what I am looking for as reconciliation, which is an autonomous 10-state federation in the country. That doesn't preclude the fact that justice must not be done. And that justice must be done on both sides, the secessionist side and the government troop side. We cannot just pick one side, that the government troops. It's not only the government troops that are committing these massacres and genocide. The rogue secessionist forces, like I said, religious zealots, tribal tyrants, hijack a fight for equity in Cameroon and turn it into a bloodbath. Those are some of the reasons why I ejected myself out of the secessionist movement, because I realized that it has been hijacked and they are carrying on atrocities that are not in line with international norms and especially the Geneva Convention, Mr. Babila. So justice before reconciliation.
Recently celebrated by the Bishop of Kumbu, His Lordship George Nkwo, on the first anniversary of the Ngarbu massacre. He called on the people not to develop the spirit of hatred and revenge, but to remain in love and to stand for justice. Whatever be the case, they should stand for justice. Now we're going to take a look at what the newspapers reported this week. I'll be right back in some few minutes. Immaculate Fogwe with the press review.
The Voice Weekender. After shameful silence over Anglophone crisis, MPs back at U.S. Congress. The same edition of the paper says, Social Democratic Front Germany chapter disavows Joshua Ossi's signature in the letter sent to the U.S. Congress. The Post Weekender reports, repatriation of Cameroonians MP's document challenging U.S. congressmen sparks controversy. The Garden Post says Dr. Christopher Fomio urges President Joe Biden's administration to take urgent action in the crisis-hit Northwest and Southwest regions. The Star: Japan donates $2.7 million US for the reconstruction program in the Northwest and Southwest regions. The Garden Post: Brave Atanganji braves separatist Fiev as he storms Mezam division. The Horizon says one victim of a lion's attack in the Far North region dies. The Garden Post reports exclusive interview with Professor Ufe Chinjemelo on alleged mismanagement of funds at the University of Ngaoundere. Cameroon Insider: Chad, Equatorial Guinea envoys at State House. CIMAC: COVID-19 under scrutiny. The Herald Tribune exclaims as government go cap in hand to donors again as it obtains 55 billion CFA francs loan for the completion of the Olymbe Stadium. The Voice: Olymbe Complex completion, additional 55 billion loan begets ramifications.
You're welcome back. We'll see with our first guest, Marshal FONCHA, chairman of New Africa Coalition Front, joining us from the Washington, D.C., in the United States of America. Some members of the country's lower house of parliament, notably some members of parliament from the opposition and some from the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, signed a letter which they sent to the U.S. Congress criticizing the congressmen for what they consider as derogatory remarks and misleading information which they made public concerning the socio-political tensions in the Republic of Cameroon. What do you think about this letter coming from a parliament that has been unable to discuss or debate the Anglophone crisis for the past 4 years, despite efforts and pressure mounted by opposition parties, and notably the Social Democratic Front on the front line?
Mr. Babila, I want to say this to all Cameroonians. Since 2016, Cameroon was engulfed in a post-colonial socio-economic and political crisis that the country has never experienced before. And Cameroon parliament and parliamentarians, as we watch in the early days, when Joseph Weber, the former parliamentarian of SDF, Joseph Weber, was addressing the House of Parliament, and the president of the parliament was not even interested in listening to what Mr. Weber Joseph was saying that day. We watch how the members of the ruling party stormed out, walked out of the parliament when this crisis began. We have watched different members of the parliament ignoring the cries and pleas of their various constituency to talk about this issue in the parliament. For almost 4 years, Cameroon parliament has not gathered the muster or the will to come out and address this issue. So my question to the Cameroon government: does Cameroon have a parliament, or does Cameroon have a kangaroo parliament? I bet it's the latter. It's a kangaroo parliament. Because if a country as Cameroon have been engulfed in this war for 4 years and the parliament has not mustered the courage to talk about it, but they have the audacity to respond to the letter from senators and congressmen from a foreign country that has taken interest of what is happening in their country, and they are only now responding to that letter, that shows you that the Cameroon people do not have a parliament that is there to solve the problem of the Cameroonian people. Because if they are only willing to respond to foreign parliamentarians and foreign countries and don't talk about the issues of their country in their parliament, then I think that parliament has to be dissolved and we have to start all over again, because that parliament has failed the Cameroonian people, and not just the opposition side, because we cannot blame the SDF, we cannot blame the other parties. We also have to blame the CPDM, because the CPDM is the majority in that parliament. So are the CPDM parliamentarians independent and working for their various constituency, or they are working for the state? Is the CPDM party parliamentarians, are they working for their constituency and for the country, or they are working for their party and the state? So these are some of the questions, the structural issues that Cameroon has. So we should forget about, we should not even take any consequences of that response or that letter that was signed by Joshua Osei and all the other Cameroon parliamentarians. Yes, they have the right to defend their country. They are parliamentarians of Cameroon. But just for the simple fact that they have not addressed this issue in their own parliament, it's quite laughable. And the American senators and congressmen, they are laughing at the Cameroonian parliaments, and they are laughing at us, because this is actually a perpetuation of the African mentality of only responding and seeking advice from the white people. So,
but the lawmakers, the lawmakers, Marshal, the lawmakers think that the image of the situation, or the picture of the situation painted by the American congressmen in their letter to Joe Biden, to President Joe Biden, concerning the Cameroonians who were to be deported from the United States, is simply misleading and giving a bad image, tarnishing the image of the country. They didn't, according to the members of parliament, they did not present the true picture of the situation, in their opinion.
Well, I mean, if the letter coming from America is painting a bad picture of the situation in Cameroon, then they, as the parliamentarians and the representative of the people of Cameroon, they should be the one actively painting a good picture about the country. And how do you paint a good picture about the country? By holding transparent discourse, by holding transparent debate about the situation, by speaking the truth to the world and to the Cameroonian people, by holding the military officers who are committing excesses, by pointing out the secessionist fighters who are committing excesses, by allowing an international fact-finding mission backed by the United Nations, to come and look at the atrocities that are happening on the ground. They are the ones responsible to paint a good picture. But so far, Mr. Babila, they cannot be pointing fingers to the American congressmen and senators that they are painting a bad image about Cameroon, while they themselves are sitting on their hands and only taking money and eating fat and don't speaking about them and debating in the parliament. So they are the ones who are actually damaging the image of Cameroon by not actually debating publicly the crises that are happening in the country. Not that I care less what the American senators and congressmen they write. They should be the one painting a good image about their country. So far, they have all failed. That parliament is a kangaroo parliament, and they have all failed. They have failed in painting a good picture about Cameroon. Lip service doesn't talk.
Chairman of New Africa Coalition Front, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Babila. Next time I will be ready. I'll be in my home office and we can continue this discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. In some few seconds, we'll be receiving our second guest. Let's take interviews of the week.
This is the second time they say they want to come and destroy our quarter. We have been waiting for them, and today we are telling them that we are already ready for them to come and break this quarter, because we do not let this quarter to go down. When this place was water, we are not seeing anybody. It's not today that they will come and claim our quarter. If there's anything that they want to do, they have to come and talk to the village. It's already a village. It's not somebody's plot, or somebody will come from anywhere and say, this is my, I have 400 hectares, I have 78 hectares. We are calling the government or whoever, the sous-prefect, to look into this situation. Every day we cannot go to bed without thinking that Bichaka is coming tomorrow. Tomorrow they are coming to Broke. Every day we are sleepless. We are calling the government to look into our situation right this moment.
The way forward for the lives of Goya is that together with the clergy, with the religious and the laity, we are going to put our heads together to see how we can continue to work together as a family in order to improve on our spiritual life, on our pastoral ministry.
10 ambulances of what we call category B, which are 4x4 vehicles that can reach remote areas to provide emergency support to the population in the framework of the fight against COVID-19. This is a funding from the government of Cameroon through the Islamic Development Bank, for which UNDP has acted as the implementing partner to support the government strengthen the health system through getting this type of equipment. We have been, the United Nations, we have been involved in supporting the government to strengthen the health system to fight COVID-19.
It was challenging when we started 2 months ago to put things together for this 26th edition of this race to take place. But you can see for yourself, we did everything that we could do. We have dotted our I's and crossed our T's. And here we are today. The race has taken off.
You're welcome back. Our second guest in this edition of The Inside, PADDY ASSANG, civil society leader, is joining us from Hamburg, Germany. PADDY, you're welcome.
Good evening, Babila, and good evening to your Equinoxe family. And I want to keep congratulating you guys for the great job that you have been doing so far amidst all this tension and hardship that our country and our people, especially of the Northwest and Southwest region, are facing. You're welcome.
Your reaction to the revelations made by Human Rights Watch in its last report on the military violence in Ebam village, southwest region of the Republic of Cameroon. At least 20 women allegedly raped by Cameroonian soldiers, several men arrested, one of them killed, houses burnt down. Your reaction to that?
Babila, you want to understand that what ignited the current wave of crisis that we have today in Cameroon, it's because of brutality from uniformed officers. So we should not forget that. And that report is accurate. And I think that it is time for the Cameroonian government to sit up. Babila, you know that before this thing whole started, the chairman Frundi had told the Cameroon government that if we are not careful, this thing is going to slip up our hands. And now that the Cameroon government doesn't listen to pressure or doesn't respond to pressure from within, we have to start pressuring the Cameroonian government from without, because they care much about the image of Cameroon abroad than what the people really want on the ground. So such reports will keep coming. The Cameroonian military is not perfect. The American military is not perfect. But these reports are a way of putting pressure on the Cameroon government to try to see how they would solve that the problems in Cameroon. And that report, many other things will still be coming. You know, there is a lot of fear in the air, and the day of reckoning, you will hear more damning revelations than what Human Rights Watch just wrote.
According to Human Rights Watch, that incident which occurred on the 1st of March 2020, that's close to a year down memory lane, has not been investigated, and alleged perpetrators not brought to book, not punished.
Mr. Babila, remember that that incident that took place in far north, where a woman was shot at point blank by Cameroon soldiers. A certain media outlet said that it happened somewhere else. It is only when it was proven that it was done by Cameroonian military, those people got investigated. And the Cameroonian government at this point will not want to investigate its own soldiers because it's going to demoralize them. And if there is a way to sweep what the soldiers are doing under the carpet, they will do it in order to keep the morale of the soldiers. But if they start investigating themselves, you will not have the effect that they want. That is to say, they will not be able to recruit people who will not like to go to the northwest and southwest region for the fear of the fact that some people might commit some crimes, or military will have some guys who go off the ontology of the armed forces would be investigated. No army investigates itself. It is very, very difficult. Even the American army doesn't investigate itself. It is only when it was leaked that the American army in Iraq was committing atrocity that they started investigation. So these are some of the means to bring justice and to hold those who are sending the military or their direct chain of command to book. We want to understand that for us, it's a very good thing that the Cameroonian military should be investigated, because we also intend, those of us who have been affected by the atrocities committed by the Amber Boys, it will give us some leverage also to put pressure so that the leaders of those so-called Amber Boys who are here, giving them orders to go and butcher chiefs and fund, like the case you saw in Libialem, will be brought to book also. So that's why we think that such reports are very, very good. They are good pressure tool for both camps to sit up and make sure that they respect the rights of the citizens who just want to live and do business as usual.
What happened? At least 20 women raped, several men arrested and tortured, brought to a military base. One of them dies in the course of that. Houses burnt down. What's your reading of the situation with regards to all of these atrocities?
Babila, I do some kind of documentation of what is happening. And the truth is that when the military gets into a village where you have Amber Boys fighting there, and when they get attacked, these boys run into agglomerations because they know the terrain better than the military people. And the military, in retaliation, it just marches there with full force and without distinction, starts arresting people, torturing people, and doing all sorts of crazy stuff that you see in that report. Those are some of the incidents that they will go into a location where they know Amber Boys there, but they cannot lay hands on them. There are some kind of doing what we call collective punishment, punishing everybody in that locality for not giving them intelligence. And you know that if those people of the locality give the military intelligence, when the military is gone, they will be the target for the Amber Boys. So when sometimes they get there, they just take everybody, go with them to their military camp, interrogate them, torture some, and do the things that you saw in that report.
Looking at the fact that what happened there is yet to be investigated, and those who were victims and survivors are now living, according to Human Rights Watch, the last report of Human Rights Watch, are now living with this disturbing information that those who did that are still moving around and have not been interrogated, have not been punished, have not been called to book. What could be the impact of this on the victims, the survivors, and other persons?
You know, Babila, when in a situation where war crimes are committed, investigations are very, very slow. And like I told you, the government will not investigate itself now because it doesn't want to demoralize the troop. That happens almost everywhere. It is only when they have finished their mission and then these people can come out. Remember that if these people, the victims, come out and speak openly, somebody could just go and take them out so that they should not be able to testify. It's a very dicey situation, and such investigations when it comes to crimes, war crimes, crimes against humanity, it could take up to about 20 years for people to be investigated. There are many cases in the ICC now where crimes were committed long ago. Remember when the case of Isan Abre came up in Abidjan? No, yes, in Abidjan, where he was tried there. Remember the case of Jean-Pierre Mbemba, and then this Central African warlord. So some of these processes take a lot of time, and I plead with the victims to just be patient, because nothing shall be swept under the carpet.
PADDY ASSANG, there is a letter that was sent by some members of Cameroon's lower house of parliament to the US Congress, criticizing the congressmen for what is considered as derogatory and misleading information contained in a letter they sent to US President Joe Biden about the situation of some Cameroonians who were supposed to be deported to Cameroon, back to their home country. And the lawmakers in Cameroon think that in that letter, the lawmakers painted a misleading picture of the situation in Cameroon. What do you think about that?
Babila, you know, the way these lawmakers function, they have people whom in their cabinets that they call lobbyists. And when the lobbyists, they want to take notes and bring to these congressmen, they write it the way the people who pay them want it to be written. American politics is all about money. So if I go now to a congressman or a parliamentarian here and I want to paint a picture, I will paint the picture from my own eyes, not from the eyes of the Cameroon government or from the Amazonian people. No, it doesn't. That's not how it works. So that letter it has its place. That is how American politics works. Now, talking about the reaction of the Cameroonian parliament, this is something that I would have appreciated if they had been proactive and did not get themselves in such a situation. The Cameroonian parliament have never sat to debate on the Anglophone crisis. When the people were marching on the streets, MPs demonstrated, none of them did not react. I hear there were 60 of them who reacted to such things. But when the Anglophone crisis popped up, we had only a few members from the opposition who took up that mantle. Had it been, they had played their role, at least those from the North and Southwest region had played their role from as elected officials or elected representatives of the people, they would not find themselves in such a situation where they will start reacting from pressure that is coming from the American Congress men and women. So Cameroon parliamentarians, they should be proactive and they will not get themselves embarrassed in that. I know that there is one of our MPs whose name has come out on that letter. I have not gotten information as to whether he actually signed that document or not. But what I know is that within the SDF we have this type of democracy, and there are several schools of thought. It is not the urgency of thinking in one direction. That is the monopoly of one thought, party discipline at all costs. It doesn't work like that within the SDF. So I'm happy that the Cameroonian parliament is reacting now, but their reaction is a little bit too late. If they had taken the mantle and said, look, Mr. Kava Yege Dribi, look, Mr. Paul Biya, this thing is getting out of hand. We are now in solidarity with our people. We are not coming to sit here and listen to that thing and disrupt everything. Such letters will not be coming from the American congressmen and women, Babila.
About a member of parliament of the Social Democratic Front who signed that letter. The Social Democratic Front has, for the past 4 years, been pressing for the Anglophone crisis to be debated in Parliament to no avail, and such a letter comes up at this point in time, and that letter is signed by First Vice President Honorable O.C. Joshua. Do you see some contradiction there?
Yes, there could be a contradiction there. There could be some contradiction there, in line with what the chairman said. If people want to get asylum, he can sign them documents to get asylum. But as I told you, within the Social Democratic Front, there is this freedom of debate. So if he actually signed it, it is not the party line of the Social Democratic Front. I am a member, I'm a militant of the Social Democratic Front, but I don't think my school of thought is very different from that of OC, from that of Ninche. I am that radical SDF that I think that we actually belong to the street, power to the people, and very close to the people. So, but all these schools of thought, they are within one party, and then we debate to come out. So Joshua OC is, as an MP, I have not verified with him if he's actually did it, but as an MP, he can do certain things that are in line with his conscience. So I don't know what, where they sat and debated and so on and so forth, but there are some actions that I have taken, that I know personally, that falls in line with the Social Democratic Front. No, the Social Democratic Front is not an exclusive party. It's a left progressive party, and we accommodate people with different opinion. That's why we keep telling our Ambazonian brothers or brothers of the Northwest and Southwest regions that if you want to get the people to follow you, don't threaten them. There are people within the system that are very sympathetic of the Anglophone cause, but because they feel threatened by the people that they want to gain their sympathy, they will not do it. And within the Social Democratic Front, to get people to come together to follow us, to give that mic, it is because we bring different school of thoughts, and then we brainstorm before we take action. So I think Joshua Osei, if he signed it, it shows that the Social Democratic Party is alive and debates are going on. If he did not sign it, it still goes to say what the Social Democratic Front is all about.
Glance through what the U.S. congressmen and women said about the situation here in Cameroon in their letter to President Joe Biden, when they were talking about the Cameroonians who are said to have escaped violence in their home country and are seeking asylum in the United States of America. Did you find anything derogatory, misleading, something that is tarnishing the image of Cameroon in that letter?
The BR regime has tarnished the image of Cameroon enough, so there is nothing that they are going to say that is going to tarnish the regime of the name of Cameroon. The regime has done it worse than any other people. These are just consequences of what the regime is doing. You want to understand that, but as Cameroonians, we all live together, and we know why people are going to ask for asylum. So I don't like to comment on that part of it. But what I want to say here is this. We have more Anglophone Cameroonians in the other 8 regions of Cameroon than we have in the whole diaspora combined. And if people are saying that they are running from the crisis, there are other alternatives. All the Anglophones who are living in the Francophone regions, they have not been killed, but anybody has a right, because of his own political opinion, because of his own political view, to seek for asylum if he thinks and he can justify and prove it beyond reasonable doubt that his opinion is threatened if you are not using violence. So some of those things that you see the right in Congress, it is done by because they have been lobbied to do so. And you want to understand that those people who are collecting money to buy guns to send to the Northwest and Southwest region, most of them are in the United States. And if they are sent back, they will have to face those consequences. So it's very logical that they go and give that kind of information to protect themselves from what eventually might happen to them if they are sent back to Cameroon.
What do you think about the humanity or humanitarian peace task force created and headed by Dr. Nick Santos, and the suggestion that there should be a conference, a peace conference in Ghana, a conference that will bring together all the warring parties, the government officials, the secessionist leaders on the same table to negotiate, to discuss on how to put an end to the atrocities in the northwest and southwest regions of the country?
Mr. Babila, I will be very honest to you. To be honest, my own group and what we have done so far, we are not going to be part of that conference in Ghana or elsewhere. And the reasons are very simple, because we have called for Anglophone General Conference. We have said Dr. Monzo came out with Anglophone Dialogue Forum. The Cardinal came out with his own initiative. We called for the National Dialogue. They say no, they will not go there, and they want to impose a venue to us. I would not like to go and be ambushed by people who have a very intolerant agenda. And Dr. Nick Santos is ready to carry that initiative anywhere. And any initiative that the Cameroon government doesn't endorse or is not backed by the Cameroon government I think it's virtually a waste of time. So we should be trying to push forward for an intra-Anglophone dialogue first, to give those people who are victims of the military, of the secessionists, those who have been money has been extorted from them, to take note of people who have lost property, be it because of the atrocities of the military, be it. So that intra-Anglophone dialogue must take place, because some of us have our lives at the line because we think differently. Remember what happened to the FONCHA. Remember what happened to the chairman. Remember what happened to the FONCHA. Remember what just happened to 3 chiefs in the BLM. Those are not isolated incidents. They are done by Ambazonian. And Anglophones will have to sit somewhere and decide the fate of these people who commanded these atrocities on our religious leader, our chiefs, and our institutions. When we would have done that, then we'll be ready now to tell the Cameroon government that we, the Anglophones, as a community, this is what we have decided. We want to forgive them and move on, or we want to persecute crimes that were actually crimes against humanity. But to sit and say, we'll go and sit somewhere and sweep everything under the carpet as if nothing had happened, is not going to work. Just like we are like the initiative that is coming up as the consequences of this Human Rights Watch, that some targeted sanctions should be levied on certain members of Mr. Biya's regime. Such things should happen to some of us Anglophones, and we should be ready to see that happen one day. That would be justice for the population that have suffered, for those who have not seen their lost ones, for those who are afraid to go back home just because they would be kidnapped, because certain Ambazonians said they should arrest people who are coming from the diaspora and let them pay taxes to Amber Boys. Somebody sat in the diaspora and said such things, and it has happened. You listened the other day in their town hall, they were saying that people kidnapped and collected ransom and sent that money back here. It's not PADDY ASSANG who is saying all these things, Babila. So any initiative that will sweep anything under the carpet, I don't think my own group, and I will not advise the political party that I am a militant of to be part of it. And I will not advise the College of Conveners of the Anglophone General Conference to be part of it. On that one, I'm very, very categorical. Thank you.
In Germany, thanks for your time.
You're welcome, sir. Next time. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for this edition of The Insight. Goodbye.